This is the other side of winning the Super Bowl. Your best players start to look to go other places, and it's happening for the Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you click that subscribe button. Do it right now. If you're new, welcome. If you are a regular, thank you for making us a regular part of what you do. My name is Travis Rogers. I host the Rams pregame show, halftime show, and postgame show on their flagship station, ESPN 710, right here in Los Angeles. And we have a whole bunch of things to get into on today's Locked On Rams podcast. We'll get to the big Vion Miller news here in just a second, but coming up in just a little bit, I want to talk about Darious Williams leaving and how the Rams may replace the corner opposite of Jalen Ramsey. And then I also want to talk more about Andrew Whitworth, who announced his retirement earlier this week, and some of the ripple effects of him leaving the organization and what that might look like on the Rams team next year. But let's get right to the biggest news of the day. Other than the fact that you need to go check out Locked On Rams on YouTube as well. Make sure you subscribe to that one also. So it looked like at the end of the season that Vion Miller was going to come back to the Rams. It looked like Vion Miller was thinking about maybe going back to Denver at one point. We all talked about the pictures he posted on social media about getting his old locker back. And then we got some reports that Vion Miller and the Rams were very close to getting something done. That both sides seemed very interested in doing it. Vion Miller even mentioned that he expected something to get done, but he did kind of leave a little wiggle room. You know, if they couldn't make it work financially, then maybe he would be willing to go look somewhere else. And then earlier, we find out that Vion Miller's going to the Buffalo Bills. He's not staying in L.A., where he won a Super Bowl last year. He's not going back to Denver, where he won the Super Bowl 50, where he was the MVP. But rather, he's going to go to Buffalo Bills, another very, very good team. So certainly winning is a part of the equation with Vion Miller. But he gets a monster contract. He gets 6 years, $120 million. That's the headline, right? The more important number is 51.5. He gets $51.5 million guaranteed. He gets $45 million of it upon signing his new contract. So congratulations to him for getting a very, very fat deal. Certainly well-deserved. He is a terrific player. He's going to go to the Hall of Fame. All of those things. Vion Miller bought a great deal of leadership, credibility, not to mention just great football when the Rams acquired him last season. They paid a very high price to go get him. So there'll be some compensatory things that are coming back the other way for the Rams. But the fact of the matter is they went big. They hit big. They won the Super Bowl. But here's the flip side of these things. He's down the road. He's in Buffalo. And now the Rams have to make some decisions. The Rams need to make some decisions on what are you going to do to replace Vion Miller. Now, and we'll get to that coming up in just a minute. But let's talk about this. Did the Rams make the right decision in letting him leave when Buffalo comes in at $120 million, 51.5 of it is guaranteed, a 6-year deal? Vion Miller turns 33 here in a couple of weeks. So not old, but certainly not young, right? He is he definitely is in the second half of his career, but still a very, very good player. Here's why I'm okay with this. And I don't love it. I would have loved to have seen him come back. I think that he and Aaron Donald together are going to give opposing offenses nightmares. They're an incredible tandem, and his leadership is very, very important. I think that he was kind of the person that pushed Aaron Donald into a more vocal leadership role, and it certainly benefited the Rams. But here's why it's okay. If the Rams think that that's too much, then it's too much. I'm going to cross the streams here a little bit. The Dodgers went big with Freddie Freeman yesterday as well, right? The Dodgers give Freddie Freeman a 6-year deal, a whole bunch of money, and Freddie Freeman will be 38 years old at the end of that deal. That Andrew Friedman and the Dodgers like it means that you need to wait and see. If the Angels gave him that deal, it would be like, this is terrible. You don't give a 38. It's Albert Pujols all over again, right? But because it's the Dodgers, because it's Andrew Friedman, you say, hey, let's wait and see how this works out. I trust him. The moves that he's made have been incredibly beneficial. They put this team in a chance to win over and over again. So let's see how Freddie Freeman looks moving forward. This is a lot like that. It's the opposite, but almost the exact same thing. What it is the Rams made a calculation. We cannot go $51 million or more guaranteed to keep Vion Miller here for a player that's going to be 33, for a player whose best football is probably behind him instead of ahead of him. This is a decision that Les Snead and Sean McVay, I'm assuming, came together on. And they said, you know what? We'd love to have him, but we can't do that. And a lot like the Dodgers, if the Rams are making these decisions, they've earned the benefit of the doubt. They have earned the benefit of the doubt to at least wait and see. I wanted him to come back. I thought he was going to come back. I thought that they would be able to reach some sort of financial agreement on how this is going to work. However, there's a point. If Buffalo, if somebody comes in heavy, 120 million over 6 years, 51.5 of it guaranteed, it's pretty damn heavy. And you decide, you know, I can't do that. That's not in the best interest of my team. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to look and see how you replace it. How is it going to look when do you go to the draft? Do you make a trade? Do you go into free agency? How do you replace a player like Vion Miller? And you're not going to get the exact same production, but it's not unlike baseball again, right? Maybe I can get 80% of the production at 30% of the price. That's a win, right? That is a win. So I'm kind of in a wait and see mode on how this is all going to play out. The Buffalo Bills are kind of following the Rams. They're close, but they realize they need to get a little bit better. The only reason they lost that game in Kansas City was because they couldn't get anybody to stop anybody, right? They could not get a stop defensively. Vion Miller's certainly going to help them be able to do that. So I'm happy for Vion Miller. He brought LA a Super Bowl. Certainly well-deserved for him to go get all that money. I am a little disappointed that Vion Miller is not going to be on the Rams, but I am not to the point where what in the world did they do? Why didn't they sign him? Well, you have to do whatever you need it is to get something like that done. It wasn't that at all. It is somebody that has earned the benefit of the doubt. If the Rams didn't want to go that far, I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to see what they do next. Congratulations to Vion Miller for getting all that money. We'll see what the Rams do coming up in just a little bit when they go into the draft, when they go into more free agency. And, you know, we know that the Rams are incredibly active in the trade market as well. I want to come back. I want to talk about Darious Williams coming up here in just a little bit. And I also want to talk more about Vion Miller and how his departure may impact Aaron Donald. That's coming up in just a bit. But first, BetOnline. The college basketball tournament is here. Like today, it is here. So for all your latest odds, contests, and player props, betonline.net is the #1 source for all of your sports betting needs and information. BetOnline remains the best spots for all your scores, all your podcasts, and all your news this season. And maybe you're not a college basketball guy. Maybe you like other things, right? You got other sports that you want information on. All of your sports wagering information needs BetOnline, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks again for making Locked On Rams your first listen every day. Make sure you're following Locked On NFL. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NFL every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. It, too, is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Travis Rogers. Thanks for checking us out. Let's finish some of those thoughts on Vion Miller leaving and going to Buffalo and how the ripple effect may take place for the Rams defensively. When you have Aaron Donald, you're in a pretty good spot, right? If you have Aaron Donald, whoever you pair him with gets exponentially better. We've seen it happen over and over again. We've talked about whether it's Michael Brockers or Sue or Dante Fowler, Malcolm Floyd, certainly Vion Miller. All of these guys, while very good players in their own right, kind of go to another level when you're on the opposite side or next to Aaron Donald. So that's really interesting. That being said, not having Vion Miller will probably impact Aaron Donald at some point because he was kind of the guy that could whisper to Aaron Donald, right? He was kind of the guy that could say things to Donald that Donald would listen to. And not that he's not a guy that's not listening to people, but there are tiers to this stuff, right? Aaron Donald is in the thinnest slice at the very top. So only other guys that are in the very thinnest slice are going to hold your attention, I think. This is why guys like LeBron James and Magic Johnson get along, right? Even though that they're from totally different generations, they kind of understand what it's like to be the other guy, and they can talk about things about what it's like to be the other guy, right? Kobe and Michael Jordan kind of get each other. I think that was the Vion Miller, Aaron Donald situation right there. So who do you go get? I'm not so worried about the football nearly as much as I'm talking about the impact on Donald. Just socially is the wrong word, but just emotionally. You know, who does he lean on? Can he pick up that leadership slack that Vion Miller? Who tells Aaron Donald, hey, listen, everybody's waiting to hear from you. You need to speak up. You're the guy that needs to rally these troops, get them ready to go. Vion Miller was the guy that did that for Aaron Donald before. Who does it moving forward? We'll see. We'll see. I'm not nearly as worried about the football as I am intrigued by who is the guy that kind of whispers to Aaron Donald and says, this is what you need to do right now, and it'll have an impact the way that it did with Vion Miller. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Darius Williams. Darius Williams is going to Jacksonville as well. He gets a new deal there. Congratulations to him. Always like to see guys get their money. This is a business, in fact, for these guys, so I certainly can respect that. This is a lot different than Vion Miller. Not only is Vion Miller going to the Hall of Fame and Darius Williams at this point is not, but this is somebody who was very, very close to losing their starting job on your team last year. Darius Williams 2 years ago, very good player, kind of found money, kind of a guy that they found as a free agent. They bring him in. He gets a starting job, plays very, very well for you, and it's kind of a win, right? This last season, a little bit of an uneven performance. Certainly not the performance that we saw the year before. I think if Robert Rochelle hadn't gotten hurt in the middle of the season. So here's what happens, right? Go back and remember. Darius Williams is playing, and he's not playing particularly well. Robert Rochelle starts to get some time. Williams gets hurt. Rochelle goes in and starts for him and does a pretty good job, right? Now all of a sudden, Rochelle's getting more and more time. Williams is back, but not playing particularly well. And it felt like, and I've been told from people inside the organization, that this was very close to going to Robert Rochelle on a full-time basis, that he was going to be the guy that was going to get that starting gig, that Williams was going to go to the bench. So watching him leave to go get that money, that's one of those, hey, man, congratulations on getting that money. Congratulations on winning a Super Bowl with the Rams. Congratulations on being an important part of what we do. But we are not going to say, hey, before you walk out the door, let us make one final offer. I think this is one of these things that the Rams have prepared for. This is a good example. They found Darius Williams on the cheap before. I think they believe they can find a player like that all over again. I think this is kind of their MO when it comes to finding players like that. Maybe guys that are drafted later down in the draft. Maybe guys that are cut by other teams. Maybe guys that they put on their practice squad and they develop and grow over time. We heard Les Snead say it when he came on the Travis and Sliwa show, when he was talking about, you know, we're willing to put inexperienced players in positions and games where a lot of other people are not, because we do things like spend a lot of money, trade a lot of draft picks. You're going to have to lean on some green guys along the way. And I think that's probably where they are at that position. We'll see whether it works or not. Again, like a lot like we were talking about with Vion Miller, I think they've earned the benefit of the doubt to see how it works. But when you have a player like Rochelle, you got a David Long Jr., you got some guys that you can at least give a shot to, some guys that have played, Dante Dion, but we'll see how it shakes out. There are players available for the Rams to plug in right there. This is not one of those, hey, what are we going to do? How are we going to replace this guy? This is not even, I don't think, the impact that you would have, for instance, Austin Corbett leaving and going to Carolina. Johnny Munt also left the team earlier this week. He went to Minnesota. Kevin O'Connell is there. Obviously, Wes Phillips, the tight end coach, certainly knew what he could bring to your team. So Johnny Munt, backup tight end, all of a sudden is in Minnesota and doing things. Those are the sorts of role players, I think, that are much harder to replace than a Darius Williams type who, while a fine player, you can find that again. It didn't cost you a lot. You got maximum value out of it while he was here. He became a starter, he became a very good player, but started to come back to earth a little bit. You have some players there that may be ready to step in and take that role. That one does not make me lose sleep at night. The Munt one is kind of interesting. So Munt goes to Minnesota, and he goes to play for a couple of guys that know him pretty well. So I think that speaks to his value. When you have coaches go to a new team and they want backup players from their old team, they see them every day in practice. They know that they're smart guys, hardworking guys, good teammates, good leaders, all of these things. You need to build a roster with those. So when they leave, I think it's meaningful. Now, the Rams have some candidates in there. You've got Bryson Hopkins. You've got Kendall Blanton. You've got some guys that have taken some snaps at tight end that you can probably drop in there and feel halfway decent about. But I don't know if those guys are nearly as versatile as what Johnny Munt had done. Johnny Munt lines up in the backfield. You can line him up as a tackle. You can line him up pretty much anywhere on the field. Some of these other guys just don't have that experience that Munt has. Munt's not a pass catcher, right? I think he caught a very small handful of passes season after season. It's not something like an offensive weapon, but what it is, kind of a Swiss Army knife. You can put him a bunch of different places, use him a bunch of different ways. A very, very good blocker, a very, very smart football player. So I think that he's one of those guys that, even though he's down in the depth chart, he's not a starter like Darius Williams, is arguably a more difficult guy to find a replacement for than somebody like Williams, who was playing really every single game and playing a ton of snaps and involved in some very big plays. Munt more of a role player, but just finding guys that know your system, finding guys that are more valuable to you based on their knowledge as opposed to their skill set necessarily. Corner, you got to be able to run fast enough. You got to be able to turn. You got to be able to do all those things, and then we can figure it out from there. What Johnny Munt was doing for the team is more, do you know what we need you to do? I know what it is. Okay, then maybe if you're a half a step slow or maybe don't have the best hand, whatever it might be, we can deal with it because I can put you in as a fullback. I can put you in as an H-back. We can use you as a second tight end. We can use you as a third tight end. Those sorts of versatilities, you're not going to find a bunch of those. Rams need to go in. They need to figure out whether Hopkins, whether Kendall Blanton, whoever it might be, can do those things. Tyler Higbee, it looks like he's probably coming back at this point, so that's good news for the Rams. But you're going to have to find somebody that can step into that backup tight end role because Johnny Munt is headed to Minnesota. Okay, another player that has left. Busy time for the Rams. A bunch of guys leaving along the way. Andrew Whitworth, who we talked about earlier on Locked on Rams, but hearing more people talk, reading more pieces about his departure, there is a very big question about how you fill his absence moving forward. That is coming up next. But not before we talk about Rock Auto. Save time and money when you use Rock Auto, right? There are so many parts and so many different cars and so many different models. The chances of your local place having what you need, they're not great, right? You walk in there and say, I need a part for an Odyssey. Is it an LX or is it an EX? Is it this or is it that? Is it this year or is it that year? You just go to Rock Auto. It makes it so much easier. Why choose to spend 30, 50% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? And you know you're going to get exactly what it is you need. Rock Auto is a family business. They've been serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. So you know that they know what they're doing, and their prices are reliably low for every single customer. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck and write Locked On in there. How did you hear about us box? So they know that we sent you their way. That's good for them. That's good for us. And most of all, it is good for you. Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box so they know where you're coming from. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, so let's talk about Andrew Whitworth a little more. He announced his retirement earlier this week, 16 seasons in the NFL, 5 seasons with the LA Rams, and a terrific football player by any measure, right? A guy that was the oldest player ever to start a game at left tackle in a Super Bowl at 40 years old. He was the linchpin of the Rams offensive line for the last 5 years and was a terrific football player. Like, I don't want to minimize how good of a player he was because he was fantastic. He gave credibility. He brought stability to the Rams O-line over the last 5 years. That's not what I want to talk about right here, but let's just make it clear one more time. I'm not dismissing his ability as a football player, but I'm not so sure that his impact as a leader, his impact as a mentor, his impact as, for lack of a better phrase, the adult in the room can be overstated. There has been a bunch of things written about who this man was over the last couple of days since he announced his retirement. Some of the things, like I mentioned, that the fires that took place a few years ago, that terrible shooting that took place a few years ago up by the Rams facility, his impact in local schools. He's somebody that feels philanthropy in his bones, that no matter where he is, he's trying to help other people. He's incredibly positive. He's talking all about his entire ethos is about believe in yourself, believe in your teammates, believe in other people. Take this positivity wherever you go. Don't let anybody ever tell you you can't do anything because it's not true. If you believe it, you can do it. Just an incredibly positive message along the way. And then there's a whole nother element to this about the Thursday sessions, right? Where after practice, before practice, he would take a group of offensive linemen and they'd work on technique. They would work on strategies and schemes and things like that because he'd been in the league for a year, 1.5 million years. So the younger players would listen to him football-wise. But it wasn't just, hey, when you're setting the edge, make sure you do it like this. Hey, when they're doing a little TE stunt here, I need you to do it like this. It wasn't just that. It was life. It was being a professional football player. It was being a man in this league and how you conduct yourself and how you get prepared to play in these games, how you live your life, how you impact the community. And it wasn't just, okay, he impacted the other tackles, the guards, and the center. So he hits 10 people in the organization. It's not what it was at all. His attitude permeated the entire building. Sean McVay was talking about how he feels he's learned as much from Andrew Whitworth as he has anybody in his football life. I mean, this is a guy that is not just a football player. He's like a dad to a lot of these guys, and a good dad, right? He's the guy that says things that make you think. He's the guy that makes you work a little harder. He's the guy that you want to please. He's the guy that puts his arm around your shoulder and tells you when you're doing a good job. He's the guy that can put a little boot in your butt and get you moving when he feels maybe you're not doing enough. Who's that guy now? How do you replace that? Again, I want to say it one more time. I'm not minimizing his impact as a football player. He's a good football player. He's a borderline Hall of Fame football player, right? Joe Noteboom can hold down left tackle. It's fine. He'll make the blocks. He'll do what he does, and that's fine. I'm not worried. But who does all that other stuff for this team? Especially with the departure of Vion Miller, who does these things to make sure that what needs to be said is said? When it comes from a coach, it's one thing, and I'm not saying it's not impactful, but it's really different when it comes from a teammate, when it comes from a peer, when it comes from somebody like Vion Miller, who's already won a Super Bowl, now 2, right? I think that's probably a big reason why Buffalo went and got him the way that they did. Not just because he can go get the quarterback, which he can. He's a pro. He's a guy that everybody listens to. Andrew Whitworth is that guy as well. Andrew Whitworth is the guy that when he speaks, everybody's listening. Matthew Stafford's listening. Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham, Aaron Donald, Vion Miller. All of these guys are listening when he says something. There's a story that went around when they were getting ready to start the playoffs against Arizona. Kind of brought everybody together in the huddle and said, hey, listen, do you know how lucky we all are to be here? Do you know how rare we are to be in this position, to play this game in this spot, in this league, in this place? And it just kind of brought everybody together. He's that guy. There are some guys that want to be leaders that aren't. There are some guys that could be leaders that choose not to. It's very rare to find somebody that has extraordinary leadership qualities and is leaning into them as effectively as Andrew Whitworth is. Who does that when they're gone? I think that's a really important thing to look at as the Rams move forward. Who is the guy that picks up the slack in the leadership with Andrew Whitworth in retirement and Vion Miller in Buffalo? They're arguably the 2 best leaders on this team. Now who? Who's going to do it? And I think that's a big challenge for Sean McVay. I think that's a big challenge for Les Snead to figure out who picks up that slack. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked on Rams. Thanks for checking us out. Click that subscribe button on your podcast feed. Click that subscribe button on your YouTube feed, Locked on Rams on YouTube. And now that you have made us your first listen, you're going to want to make your second listen, Locked on NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL corner Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It, too, is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, whose house? It's Locked on Rams house.